Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of what we're going to be calling In the 11. So my name is Brendan Griffiths, and I'm going to be hosting this podcast. Just to introduce myself a little bit. I grew up in upstate New York, and I played soccer probably ever since I was 5-6 years old. I proceeded to play throughout my youth career, my high school career, went on to play in college for 4 years, and now I'm kind of in the process of pursuing a footballing career post-college. So the goal of what this podcast is what I hope is to kind of give you a little bit of insight into what I'm doing right now, what that looks like for me, quote unquote, chasing the dream. My hope is as well that I can give a little bit of insight into another player who's looking to do something similar to this. And then just for the average fan, the average watcher of the game, I hope to provide a little bit more of a behind the scenes look at, what some of the athletes that you're watching, what it took for them to get to the point that they are today, to talk about sort of some of the misconceptions and some of the things that just maybe the common person doesn't really know about what it's like to be an athlete, whether that be at the professional level or whether that be aspiring to be the professional level, all the way down to a collegiate athlete or a youth player. So to give a little bit more backstory about myself, and I'll try and keep this part brief just because this is something that I hope to do in future episodes, kind of dive a little bit deeper into what my career has looked like thus far. So like I said, I played high school soccer, I played club soccer in upstate New York. I played for a club called Blackwatch Premier growing up, and I also played high school soccer for the high school that I went to, a public school in Niskayuna High School. Once I graduated, I went on to have I guess you could say a bit of a tumultuous career at the collegiate level, but essentially I wound up doing 2 years at the junior college level for a school called Tompkins Cortland Community College. Then I proceeded to finish out my bachelor's degree and played 2 more years at a school called Chestnut Hill College, which is Division II, located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As I mentioned, that's definitely a story that I would love to get into later on down the line in a more long form episode of this podcast because it was definitely an interesting road in my college career. So following my graduation from Chestnut Hill, I knew that I wanted to continue to pursue playing. I didn't really know exactly what that looked like at the time. I didn't really know how to go about that. And so I graduated in December of 2017, and then kind of just went out into the world trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to achieve this dream? And it was a lot of trial and error. It was going to combines, going to events, things of that nature. And kind of in the meantime, another passion of mine that I had was also coaching. So what I did was I joined the staff at my alma mater, Chestnut Hill, as an assistant. And I started coaching some club ball as well, some youth ball for a club called Montgomery United. And so that kind of gave me a little bit of an insight that I hope to talk about on this pod as well, about maybe some of the nuances and differences between coaching and playing, just some of the things that I've learned in both of those endeavors, and what that's like too, from a different perspective of maybe trying to pursue both of those things at the same time. So while I was coaching, I actually wound up having 2 coaching gigs prior to getting the opportunity to continue my playing career. While I was coaching, it was a combination of coaching at the collegiate level, coaching at the club level, playing as much as I could, which is really just Sunday league, amateur league type things, men's league during the week, training on my own as much as I could, jumping into sessions with the college teams at the time that I was coaching. So while I was doing all those things, it was also trying to work as well, because coaching isn't exactly the most lucrative pursuit, especially in the beginning. And so it was kind of a combination of juggling all those different things with the ultimate goal of finding an avenue for me to continue pursuing my playing career. So I did that for probably about a year, I would say, until I got my first opportunity, where I went over to Germany. This was in 2019, in the summer of 2019. And I got my first opportunity to play with a club called FCA Darmstadt. I was there from July until the end of the first half of the season, which was about December. So 5 or so months. And then while I was there, I went on a number of different trials with other German clubs and managed to land a contract with a team in Bremen called DJK Germania Blumenthal. So that was my intent. In this year, in March, I had a flight booked and everything set to fly over to Germany and play for this club for the remainder of the season. This podcast was supposed to be recorded and filmed while I was over there to try to. This is something that I've always wanted to do, but this was also going to be maybe me talking a little bit more while a season is going on and what that looks like, and being overseas by yourself, and was going to have a little bit more difference to it. Obviously, the coronavirus played a big role in changing my course, not only for this podcast, which is probably the least important aspect of it, but also just my life, because obviously, as you can see right now, I'm not in Germany. I am currently in New York. My flight was actually supposed to leave March 14th, and that was kind of right around the first week where there were serious limitations and restrictions just put on things like travel, and sporting events started to be shut down, whether that was at that time, whether it was fans weren't allowed in the stadium or just, games not happening altogether. Obviously, at this point now, we know that it's evolved to a much different state, and sort of the point that I'm at right now is just waiting and seeing what the next steps are going to look like for myself and my career, but really just soccer in general. When is soccer going to come back? What is it going to look like when it comes back, and how do I maybe fit into that world once it resumes, and whatever status that is. So I understand why some of you may be asking yourself, okay, how am I going to listen to just one guy talking to a microphone for, however long this turns out to be? I imagine around 30 to 45 minutes. And I think the reason that I did that, first off, let me say, I do hope to, at some point along the road, have guests come on, some of the coaches that I've had, some players that I've played with, and other people who can provide some insight into this podcast as well. I hope to have onto this show one day. But like I said, why is it predominantly me right now? I think that was kind of I chose that for a specific reason, being, like I said, when I was planning on going over to Germany, this was when I was planning to start this podcast, and that was going to be an adventure and a period of my life that was very solitary, I guess you could say. And that's kind of what I want to shed a little bit of light into, on what it's really like being an athlete trying to pursue something as difficult as this is. It's a lot of time spent on your own. It's a lot of time, really just by yourself, and you have to figure things out for yourself. And not to say that you need to resort to talking to yourself in a room, but in a lot of ways, it's a completely unique experience to many athletes, especially if you've been used to the collegiate level, in where you don't have that same support system that you once had. You don't have all your your teammates and your classmates with you there every single day. A lot of times it's going to be you sitting in an apartment by yourself. You're able to go to training and socialize there and be with your team there. But a lot of it is going to be on your own. And are you really comfortable and determined enough to be in a situation like that, in an environment like that, where you consistently are really kind of your own support system, I guess. Obviously, it's, as I'll talk about later on, it's critically important to have people in your life that you can talk to and that can support you through this arduous process, because it is going to get too tough at times to just do it on your own. But the reason why I bring it up is because it's just something that you have to grow accustomed to. I heard something on a podcast once that kind of said something along the lines of, if you want to pursue this dream, you really have to be okay with yourself. You have to kind of be able to be okay inside your own mind. And I thought that was something that really resonated true, because at the end of the day, in pursuing this, you're really going to have to be your biggest fan, your biggest support system. It has to come from within yourself. As I'm going to talk about further in this podcast, you're going to have to be able to pick yourself up from a number of different obstacles and pitfalls that you're going to face along the way. And if you don't have the ability to pick yourself up when it gets difficult, and keep going without that constant kind of reassurance, I guess you could say, from those around you, it's going to become extremely difficult. I wouldn't say that it's impossible, but that's something that I know is imperative to everyone who tries to pursue something like this, is you have to be able to support yourself as much as you can. And that's kind of something that I hope to talk about further on down the line as well, is that there was definitely times, I can say from my personal experience that I wasn't always my biggest support system. And there's been times when I've struggled with different issues regarding my mental health, regarding my confidence, and really just on the whole, being the biggest believer in myself, pursuant of this dream and whether or not I can achieve it. So I think that's a main reason why I want to come to a medium like this and try and discuss some of those things, because I think a lot of times there's still a misconception that athletes have this very easy and blessed life and lifestyle. And I will be the first to admit that even though I haven't made it, as you could say, I'm not a professional right now, and I haven't made it to what I feel like is hopefully the pinnacle of my career. I will, without a doubt, say that I'm blessed to pursue the life that I have right now. I know that there's many other people out there who aren't as privy to the same set of circumstances that I am, to allow them to pursue the same thing. So, like I said, I feel like I'm blessed to be able to do what I do, but at the same time, by no means does that make it easy. By no means does that make it something that is fun. Every single day that you wake up and try and get a little bit closer to becoming a professional. So my hope is that I can try and shed a little bit of light on that side of what pursuing the dream really looks like. and what that looks like for many different people in all walks of life. With that being said, I know already there's a number of athletes, whether it be soccer, whether it be other sports, where something similar to this kind of medium or long form discussion style is done. Why I think this can be something that can be beneficial is what you'll find, especially as you continue to rise up through the ranks of this game, is that every single player that you come across has a completely different story as to how they got there. And I think every single player or every single person out there can try and take something from everyone that they meet along the way, and can take some value in the fact that maybe my story can resonate a little bit more with this person versus some of the other creators that you may listen to or watch. Like I said, I was a player who, coming out of high school, had no Division I attention, had no real ability at the age of 17, 18 to even think about considering an overseas pro career. And I had to go a very non-traditional route. And so maybe that's something that can resonate a little bit more with the person right now who's thinking, okay, well, if I don't do it that way, is there really a route for me to get to where I want to be one day? My hope is that if someone out there is listening and sees the way in which I what progressed through my career, that's something that they can draw inspiration from that, and realize that even though they feel as if maybe they're not on the most traditional route to get to where they're trying to go, that it still is plausible, it still is feasible. And, also on the flip side of that is maybe you listen to some of the things that I discuss and you realize, and you see some of the pitfalls that I made along the way and some of the mistakes that I made, because as I look back on it now, I know that there's things that I would have done differently in my career. I don't have any regrets in the choices that I've made, from the perspective of, I feel as if every step that I took and every place that I went to has allowed me to wind up to where I am now. However, having said that, looking back, would I have probably done things a little bit differently? Maybe. And I know that sounds like a bit of a catch-22, I guess, or a bit of a contradiction, but I think anyone who gets to a point where I am now and looks back at yourself, and it's the age-old question of, if you knew what you know now, what would you go back and tell maybe your 15-year-old self or your 13-year-old self? And I know for a fact I would look back at myself then and realize and say, listen, this is something that you're going to want to pursue one day, and you have to work for it much harder now to reap the rewards from it later on in your life, in your career. I feel like I'm sort of in a unique position where I'm not necessarily an athlete who, from a young age, knew that I wanted to pursue a professional soccer career. I grew up playing a number of different sports: basketball, baseball, soccer, and up until really I was 12 or 13, I played all of them pretty much all year round. I wasn't specifically a soccer player, and I probably, if I had my choice when I was 11, 12 years old, I would have said I wanted to be a professional basketball player. When I arrived to high school, I made the choice to place my sole emphasis and focus on soccer. Luckily for me, as I wound up being 5'9", I didn't continue to pursue a professional basketball career. But even during high school, I still never thought that a soccer career in professional soccer was really what was going to be something that was in the cards for me. And I think it wasn't really until I got to maybe my third year of college where I started to be around some people with common interests, some guys in my team who had common interests, and you see a player here and there do it, and you're like, okay, well, if they can do it, who's to say that I can't? So it really probably wasn't until I was 19, 20 years old that my focus started to shift, and I dedicated myself more to the craft, and I dedicated myself more to aligning my goals and my actions with the end ultimate aim of trying to become a pro. And I share this because I think if you're a younger player listening right now or watching right now, and you think that this is something that you would want to pursue one day, that this is something that you feel like is something that you want to dedicate your life to, then put in the effort and put in the time now rather than later. Because you'll make it much easier on yourself if you do the work early. So hopefully this can be something that can provide you with a story to relate to, something to hopefully inspire you maybe, or maybe something, sort of a roadmap with which to show you, okay, these are maybe some of the doors that I should try and open. These are some of the doors that I should leave closed. And the more knowledge and the more stories that you can listen to, the more it's going to help you in your career. The more athletes who have done what you are trying to do that you can take advice from, is only going to be that much more beneficial to you as you try and come up and carve your own way and pave your own path in your career. So I know I've sort of rambled a bit of everywhere here in this first episode, and I apologize for that. Hopefully I've tried to keep it as concise and directed as I possibly can. Obviously that will get better as I continue to do this and continue to have practice in this longer form type of medium where I'm trying to give you a monologue and give you information, and there's going to be times when I come off on tangents and can't find my way back, but I'm doing my best and I'll hopefully improve as I keep going along with this. With that being said, my goal for this is to provide you a story, if nothing else, provide you the story of what I've done so far, and share with you a little bit of insight into who I am and some of the ideas that I have. I also hope that this can provide some guidance and some help to players who are in the same point in their career as me, players who want to maybe one day be at the same point as me in their career, whether it be a player in college right now, a youth player coming up, whatever the case may be. And also maybe to the fan of the game who wants to gain a little bit more access, gain a little bit more knowledge into what it's like really being an athlete, those people that you are following in the sport that you love. So if there are things that you have heard today that you're like, okay, that's an interesting topic, I would like for him to expound upon that, definitely let me know. Any questions, comments, things that you have regarding the podcast, things that you think I can do better, definitely don't hesitate. Wherever you're listening to this or watching this, leave me a comment, leave me a review. Like I said, wherever you're watching it, let me know what you think. Would love to hear feedback. And if you have questions, if there's things that you would like my specific opinion on, or you have questions about my career thus far, topics for discussion for myself, topics for episodes, whatever the case may be, I'm just really curious and interested to hear some feedback from all of you. And hopefully I can try and provide some sort of value to whoever's listening to this. As far as what the future looks like for this podcast, I think right now I've kind of set on about one episode every 2 weeks. I may try and do one per week. I may try and do a little bit longer space in between each episode. I'm not really sure. I'm still gonna kind of tinker with a few things, and as we start to get more of a catalog of episodes up and running, I start to get some feedback. That's something that we can change on the fly as we go forward with this. As far as myself personally, for right now, the podcast is still going to be filmed and recorded here in New York, where I'm staying, as I don't really have a definitive plan as to what's going to be the next step in my career. Simply because I don't really know when, as I talked about in the very beginning, I don't know when football is going to come back and in what capacity, and where I'll have an opportunity to play. That's something that I'll talk about further, but I'm kind of in the process of just finished up redoing a highlight video and am determining where I'm going to start sending that out, where I'm going to start figuring out what my next move is, what context I'm going to speak to. Because, while I did have the contract in Germany, I don't know if the German lower leagues are going to start back up, if they're going to allow for foreigners to come back, if the season's only going to be a few short weeks. Does it make sense for me to fly over and only play for a couple weeks when, as some of you may know, visa restrictions and requirements are extremely stringent? So I don't know, is the best thing that I can say right now, and it's frustrating because it feels like it's what I say all the time, but I'm sure that is something that many of you can relate to right now in the sort of quarantine time. I don't know exactly where I'll be playing or when I'll be playing again, but the goal is definitely to return to a club, wherever that is in the world, at some point in time, hopefully in 2020. So that sort of wraps it up for this first episode. As I said, make sure, it would really mean a lot to me if you are, watching this on YouTube. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. If you're listening to it, please do the same. Review it, or if you discovered this through social media, whatever the case may be. Would really love to get feedback. Would really love to address some of your comments and questions, and just kind of let me know what you think about this. And so, with that being said, this was episode 1 of In the 11.